Impact. Real human interest stories ranging from the ordinary to the truly extraordinary.
Disclaimer. The opinions expressed by the guest and interviewee and those providing comments are theirs alone and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of VX3 Exchange or any employee thereof. VX3 Exchange is not responsible for accuracy of any of the information supplied by the guest. It is not the intention of VX3 Exchange to malign any community, religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, or individual.
Hello, this is Fatima Husain, and you're listening to Season 2 of Impact, the program which introduces you to extraordinary human interest stories from around Canada. Filled with a passion for the written word, Pauleanna Reid would spend hours journaling as a child. However, being bullied throughout her school years nurtured within her a deep sense of insecurity. Her struggles followed her through college, and she suffered in silence. Later, she was officially diagnosed with depression. Determined to make a difference, Pauleanna soon braved her troubles and set on a path to become a writer. Today, Pauleanna is a Canadian journalist and a mentor who's made a difference inspiring young people around the globe.
My name is Pauleanna, and I like to introduce myself as a millennial woman who fought for her dreams and won. My story begins when I was in high school. I was bullied a lot. I always felt misunderstood. I was not really a part of any cliques or any particular group. I had a lot of acquaintances. I never really felt like I had true friendships. And so I spent a lot of time alone in order to avoid the chaos that followed me everywhere. And during these moments when I was alone, whether it was the library, the cafeteria, the girls' washroom, I would take my pen and my notebook and I would doodle and I would journal and I would dream and I would just think of life beyond these four walls. I was not a scholar. I was not good at many of the classes, and I think that had a lot to do with my learning style. I think that had a lot to do with the lack of confidence, lack of self-esteem, lack of self-worth as well. And I failed grade 10 math and science, failed grade 11 and 12 English. I went to summer school, I went to night school, and that definitely had an effect on how I viewed myself and what I thought I was capable of. It wasn't until my senior year when we started talking about, what is the next phase of your life going to look like? And, you have conversations with your guidance counselors and your peers, and people are excited for college, that I started thinking about what I wanted to do. And, I planted all those seeds as a writer, in my free time. And that was where my passion came for writing. But when I pursued conversations with my teachers and my guidance counselor, as well as my parents, everyone pretty much told me that I was not meant to be a writer. I could not make money from my art, and that I should probably choose a safe career path because I was young, I was Black, and I was a woman. What happened next is I fell into the depths of my depression. So my depression started when I was relatively young. I'd gone through an extensive amount of trauma before I hit college. I was date raped at 13. I got pregnant at 17. I did not choose to carry through with the pregnancy, and I ended up having an abortion after my boyfriend in high school got two other girls in my school pregnant. I was in a physically abusive relationship, and I had made some poor choices, and I take accountability for my role in certain situations. And so dealing with the heaviness of not necessarily knowing how to navigate those emotions or that trauma, coupled with what the hell do you want to do with the rest of your life, coupled with people not believing in you, resulted in me seeing some of my darkest days and just not wanting to socialize, not wanting to get out of bed, just not wanting to live because I didn't understand or didn't really see what a future would look like for a kid like me. I was still, grieving. I was still going through mental stress. I was still dealing with, when you're that age, you constantly think about how do people perceive you? You constantly think about, are people whispering about you? People don't necessarily have their facts straight. So there's all these things that it was such a layered process. So the final decision that my, let's say, board of advisors, parents, teachers, and so on made was that I was not to pursue writing. And so I ended up entering a college program that was selected for me, and I was miserable from day one. I entered an office administration program, a 2-year program. I ended up dropping out my second year after a suicide attempt. Oddly enough, when I recovered from my suicide attempt, I was so much more optimistic because I realized that second chances existed and I was committed to that purpose. And in order to do so wholeheartedly, it definitely meant I had to remove any roadblocks in my way. The biggest roadblock was school. I didn't know how I was going to figure it out. I had no idea what my next step was. I just knew that there's a will, there's a way. I dropped out of school. I didn't tell my parents for, I would say, at least a year. I acted like I was going to class, but really wasn't. I didn't want to say anything until I actually achieved something worth speaking of. My next immediate step was to create a concrete list of goals. Like, what did I want to achieve, accomplish? What did that look like in terms of timelines? What resources did I need? And oddly enough, I also knew that I needed mentors in my life because I could not lean on a traditional education system. I knew that I needed the right people who saw me and believed in me in order to really make things happen. I entered a community organization as a student called the Remix Project, which was founded by Drex Jankar and Gavin Shepard. And it was one of the best things that could have ever happened to me. Through the Remix Project, I met one of my first mentors, Shannon Boudram, and then organically I connected with a second mentor. This was back in 2009. Those two mentors are still in my life 10 years later. They've played instrumental roles in the development of how I view myself and the development of my womanhood. And they were the ones that kind of jump-started my writing career. They encouraged me to start a blog. And from the blog, things really took off from there. My battle with depression continues. You don't ever escape depression. Depression started when I was relatively young, and I still battle thoughts inside my head that most people will never understand. I've learned how to effectively manage it over the last decade. I wasn't diagnosed until 2010 though. I think most people just don't even talk about it. Most people who have depression and anxiety don't talk about it. So the community can't lend support when they don't understand and when they don't know it's even happening. A lot of people, they put a smile on their face, they may wear a mask, they act as if everything's okay. So equally so, people can't help you if they don't know something's wrong with you. So I think it's necessary for people to speak up if they do in fact feel that they're feeling off, feeling emotional. They find it hard to do simple tasks that most people probably take for granted. The best thing I could have ever done for myself is go to my doctor. So I had my suicide attempt in 2008. I told my doctor, I didn't come to terms with it until 2010, let's say that. Because I thought, once I kind of bounced back, I was like, you know what, I'm good. I'm going to move on with my life. I'm going to drop out of school. That is the answer. When really depression is a very layered circumstance or feeling or emotion. And so 2010, I go into my doctor's office. We have a heart to heart. Now, this is someone who's known me since birth. I think that's another thing. I've been very fortunate. My doctor was white, he was rich, he was famous. That's not a combination that many people have. Nobody I know has that. Whereas most of my friends got stuck in the system. They've been on waiting lists for a long time. They can't find the help that they need. I was very fortunate enough to have an ally in my corner who had my best interest that I could go to anytime I wanted. A doctor that has been with me since birth. A lot of my peers, they do not have family doctors that have been with them that long. So I have to say I was fortunate in that regard in terms of support. I didn't get support from my own community, the Black community, in terms of the adults in my life, teachers in my life. My family did not understand. I also think it's because they weren't equipped or educated with the knowledge or the background to make informed decisions or statements. There just wasn't much conversation, but I also didn't speak up either. You can't expect someone to help you because they cannot read your minds. For me, it was just, even though, yes, I displayed symptoms, but if someone is not informed or educated about what mental health or mental illness is, they're not going to be able to identify those symptoms. How can they throw me a life vest if I didn't tell them I was drowning? Or not tell them, but if I didn't tell them how I felt, or if they couldn't recognize the fact that I was drowning. So I do take some responsibility. On the flip side, when I did voice my opinion and when I did speak up, I didn't necessarily have a lot of people rushing to my aid, but through the advocacy work that I do, the closest people to me have become enlightened, educated around these issues. They look at things from a whole new perspective. I had gone through a lot of, in terms of my interactions with men, my interactions at school, just being bullied and feeling worthless. And then, couple that with just really asking yourself, what do you want to do? And, you get excited about an idea, then everyone tells you oh, you can't do that. How are you going to make a living from that? I think that young people go through many transitions and we don't often know how to handle them. And that can really mess with your head. It can really make you second guess your existence distance. It can make you second guess your decisions. There's just a lot of pressure from the media, society, people around us. And so I just couldn't handle the pressure anymore. For me, it just didn't even make sense. Like if I could not live the life that I wanted, or if I was seeking other people's permission, and when they did not grant me permission, that's when it just got worse. I never wanted to be one of those adults that they look back on their life and said, like, what if? It was a layered decision. It was something that I have been thinking about for a long time. And then I decided that I remember the day, that I said goodbye to my siblings and my parents. And it was a situation where I decided I was going to walk off a subway platform. I've done some incredible growth since, and it's been 10 years. So I'm very much comfortable talking about it. There was an angel on the platform with me that day, for sure. I was very close to the edge. I was playing a game inside my head. Like I wanted it to be immediate. I didn't want it to hurt. I didn't want to feel anything. So I was going to time it so that exactly when the train arrived, I would walk off. But there was a man, I guess, in the wings. Everyone has intuition. Not everyone pays attention to it. So there was a man in the wings who had an intuitive message, I guess, that gave him an inkling that something was off. The student who's standing far too close to the edge, it just didn't make sense to him. And as soon as I stepped forward, he actually grabbed the loop on my backpack and pulled me down. And then there was a lot of commotion. It definitely shook me up because I was in your mind, you kind of make the infinite decision that, okay, cool, this is it. Actually, my initial reaction was anger, and then that transitioned into relief. Now what? What is the game plan? Second time was just prescription drugs. Everyone goes through their own private battles behind closed doors. I'm okay with sharing my story, but imagine all the stories that are not told and all the people that struggle behind closed doors and they're not there yet. They can't even tell a single person. Yeah, my bravery is public because I'm a public figure, but there are people walking the streets who are unsung heroes every single day. And I think that they deserve the real applause. I run a program called New Girl on the Block. I'm laughing only because my girls are my world and they crack me up every day. And sometimes I have to knock their head off because young people are young people. And a lot of us are not, that far apart. But it's so funny when they step to me and they're, their life is on a clock. They feel like they should be this point in their life by this age. And it's so funny because I just look back at them. I'm like, you're fine. But I have to try and be sensitive because, the things that they're going through are real issues. I don't want to replicate what other people did to me, so we have very good relationships. I love them so much. I've mentored just over 200 women in 10 countries, and nothing brings me more joy. That's the heartbeat of my existence, is to give back and mentor. I currently have 6 mentors of my own in different areas of my life. When people take the opportunity to invest in you and to really see you, I think there's something to be said about their character, and I just feel obligated to pay that forward. And I like to call it, creative education. It wasn't until I got older that I realized that my learning style was more visual than anything. And, that's possibly why, I felt like my teachers were talking a foreign language in the classroom. And honestly, probably why I failed all of my grades. I like to create learning curriculums that adapt to the individual's learning style. And we have fun and we take field trips. And, I do whatever it takes. I kind of take away all the barriers from their experience. So, if I feel like someone needs to jump on a plane and we need to go to New York for a field trip, we do that. If, finances is the reason why one of my mentees can't get books for her class, then get her books. I've been very blessed, and in my prayers to God, I always ask him to bless me so I can bless others. It's I just came back from a volunteer trip in Ghana, West Africa, and I connected with this young gentleman. I connected with many youth over there, but I connected specifically with this young gentleman. His name is Innocent, and I just had never been exposed to, I had never been over there, so I'd never been exposed to what many people are dealing with in terms of, their living conditions, in terms of what they have access to, what they don't have access to, their lack of resources. And so I connected with this young man, and I'm committed to sponsoring him. I'm committed to helping him achieve whatever he wants to achieve. And I don't know why I feel drawn to him, but when I think about how strong our dollar is in comparison, I'm like, why aren't more people sponsoring more kids? Why aren't more people? It's nothing for us to just, Yeah. So I take my role as a mentor very, very seriously. I don't play when it comes to that part of my life, because because it can make the biggest difference between whether or not someone wants to see another day. And just naturally, minorities are drawn to me because we can kind of see the world through the same lens. And I love lending my time, especially to my old high school, even though it was the worst years of my life. Now they have like leadership programs and they have all these things in place to make sure that the kids succeed. And so I will always, never forget where I came from and understand that, at 13, 14, 15, that's such a critical age. And so if I can go back and just lend my time and share my experiences and show them that there is life after disappointment, I will always make the time in my calendar to do that. In 2014, I had a book launch for my first book called Everything I Couldn't Tell My Mother. And nearly 300 people showed up. It was such a magical experience. And one gentleman by the name of Nathan, he actually works with me now on my team. I believe that was the first time we met. And he stood up when people were giving their compliments and just, like testimonials and stuff like that. He stood up and I think at the time, if I get this correctly, at the time, his daughter, her name is Love. First of all, that's an amazing name. His daughter was quite young, maybe 5 or so. And he had said, I cannot wait to get this signed by you because when she's of age, when she becomes a teenager, I'm going to hold this for her so that she can read it. I had quite a few men in the audience, I think because they have little girls and they wanted to learn what the world looks like through their lens. And so that was actually like pretty special for me. My mom did not have a great relationship for majority of my life. I always felt that she loved me but didn't like me. There's a huge difference in that. She grew up very traditional and she was a good girl. She followed rules and I did not. A lot of the things I had dealt with as a kid, I didn't feel like I can go to her. And like when you're at such a fragile age, you want to go to your mom, but when you feel like you can't talk to her about certain things, it hurts. It's not a good feeling. So you end up going to your friends and your friends end up giving you bad advice, and then you continue down this like really crazy path of making like insane decisions that could cost your life. Or I've been in a lot of dangerous situations where like had I not made that turn, I probably wouldn't be here, And so Everything I Couldn't Tell My Mother was my way of just letting go of a lot of emotional baggage that I accumulated during my teenage years as a result of my own decisions. I don't necessarily blame her for that. It's more so just like it's a fiction novel based on true life events in my life. So all the traumas that I mentioned prior, it elaborates, and it was my way of really communicating to her, and you can read it at your leisure. And I'm hoping we can have a meaningful conversation. I think mother-daughter relationships are quite complex, and we ought to try to make an effort. I think both parties need to like meet halfway. And so I think that was my way of trying to open up to her and start a conversation that we very much needed to have. We're still trying, kind of struggling, but open-minded at this point. But today she's like my best friend. Like I can tell my mom anything, and like she doesn't always like it, but at least we're talking. Someone had asked me at a speaking engagement, what are like 3 things that you've done that you feel like has contributed to your success? And one of the things that I feel like I've done is like mend the relationship with my mom. It was a live podcast in front of a live audience, and I was a mess because she was in the audience. Let things go. Apologize to people in your life. You block your blessings if you don't let go of those emotional burdens. There was no way I was going to carry all that resentment and that anger into me. Like I could not carry that emotional baggage into the future. I knew that it was going to hinder any kind of success that I wanted. Honestly, I think mistakes are good. Like, you need mistakes to learn from them. I think my parents wanted me, just naturally you're protective and you want your child to live a sheltered life. But that doesn't help. That doesn't help the situation, because then you're not exposed to certain things and you can't make purposeful decisions because you're not informed. So I encourage young people to travel and try new classes and sign up for that course and couch surf and like do different things so that you can run into your purpose and your passion, and like so that you can be exposed to different kinds of people from all walks of life and backgrounds. Like you have to, like that's the best way. I cannot wait till I have children of my own. Like I'm gonna ship them across the world and say, see ya. I want them to live a life full of adventure. My little sister, my baby, she just came back from a backpacking trip to Europe, and she was by herself, and she just kind of went from hostel to hostel, and like every day I was tracking her phone, and every day I was like, literally, me and my mom were so terrified, but like she was just like, I'll be fine, I'll call you if I need you, I'll figure it out. I like that type of attitude, and I think more young people should embrace it and just not be so scared of every single little thing, because it works in your favor. Everything comes together for good.
That was Pauleanna Reid sharing her story. To find out more about Pauleanna, visit her website at pauleannareid.com. You can now access Impact online on SoundCloud and Spotify at Vibe105TO. And before we leave, we'd like to extend our thanks to Pauleanna Reid and VX3 Exchange.
Impact is a production of VX3 Exchange, featuring the stories of extraordinary people, sharing their stories again and again at vx3exchange.com or our social platforms at VX3 Exchange.